The Mystara project is proud to present Part 5 of the Law of Mystara series. In this episode, we shall cover the 500 years from 4500 BC. This period covers the rise of an obscure frontier barony to a kingdom on the cusp of world domination. Sometime between BC 4500 and BC 4000, the evergreen elf, Kalitha Starbrow, embarks on the path of the dynasty sponsored by Ordana. On 3 occasions she travels forward in time to guide her Mystara clan of water elves through critical periods, such as the Great Rain of Fire in BC 3000 and the Dread Coast Cataclysm of 1750 BC. As her testimony, Kalitha creates the Pearl of Power and gifts it to the Mystara clan. Kalitha achieves immortality and is perhaps the first Mystaran elf to do so. In 4500 BC, the reigning immortal hierarch of entropy, Hell, starts reincarnating the souls of wicked humans and demi-humans into beast men. Such was to be their punishment to atone for their evil ways. These humanoid creatures have animal features. Their offspring are born with random animal features. This chaotic reproduction feature greatly amuses Hell. Hell places the beast men in the upper Borean Valley. Not long thereafter, humans discover this hostile new race. In BC 4500, Chthonian colonists, including Coronis, found the settlement of Blackmoor on the south coast of the Black Sea to the northwest of Chthonian. The settlement is founded on a peninsula of strange black rock which is later discovered to be the source of powerful, wild magic. The site also benefited from a good harbor and agriculturally rich, black soil. Coronis becomes a counselor to the ruler of Blackmoor. The wild magic spawned unusual and unprecedented monsters, such as gibbering horrors that killed during the night, leaving in their wake only smashed timbers and the bloody remains of farming families. Scandaharian raiders plagued the coasts of the Northlands each year. The empire of Chthonia's control in the northwest ends at the Mystara River, west of Blackmoor. Many escaped criminals, slaves, and serfs flee the empire to farm the west bank of the Mystara, calling themselves the Unwanteds. The Unwanteds come under the protection of the independent Duchy of the Peaks to the northwest. The Duchy is a decadent realm known for its diamond mines in the Superstition Mountains and pleasure slaves in its capital of Starport. Sometime between BC 4500 and BC 4440, Coronis becomes concerned with some decisions Blackmoor's rulers are making. He builds a time machine to venture into the future to discover what happens to the town he had helped found. He is horrified to discover the destruction of Blackmoor. Coronis travels a century into the future to convince a number of his descendants to travel to another world where another Blackmoor culture can be built and preserved. Coronis finds a time travel artifact that is more reliable than his time machine. Once his dynasty was secure, Coronis sent his artifact well into the future to prevent its use to sabotage his dynasty. Coronis then becomes an immortal in the sphere of time on the path of the dynasty. Coronis through time travel was remarkably his own sponsor. Between BC 4500 and BC 4300, a second wave of people fleeing Chthonian law settle the sea coast between the Barrier Swamp and the Mystara River. The Unwanted gradually expand their holdings out 40 miles west of the Mystara River from the sea to what would later be called the Hills of Ten. Over the next several decades, the Unwanted's population grows and the settlements of Robinsport, the pirate stronghold of Port Dacoit, Hanford and Silver Bell are founded. Chthonian goes through political upheaval, creating the Third Republic. The empire is to be ruled by a senate who periodically elect an imperium of 1 to 6 members from one of the 6 leading families of Chthonian. The senate or imperium appoint governors, commissions and plenipotentiaries to administer the empire. A number of noble families flee to the territory of the Unwanteds in fear of rivals who have benefited by the laws of the Third Republic. With no remaining free land in the Unwanteds' territory, the noble families either found merchant houses in the towns or pioneer new settlements in the wilderness. Southport was one of these settlements, founded by the Rothermans to take advantage of new trade in hides and furs from the plains of Hack. The barony of Cleve is founded by the Campbells in the Vale of Glenfinnan, between the Gargoyle and 10 Hills. The Stuyvesants and Fun Rains become merchants in Port Dacoit. The Walcherans and Peels become merchants in Robinsport. The White Gladstones become merchants in Silver Bell, while the Red Gladstones become merchants in Hanford. The Degurns found the settlements of Octogurn and Roosagurn. Within a few years of arrival, the noble families extend the territory of the Unwanteds from the western edge of the Barrier Swamp to Southport. The Duchy of the Peaks continues to provide protection for the Unwanted against Thonian reprisals and nominally claims their territory. Over the years, the Third Thonian Republic functions differently to how it was intended by the lawmakers. The Imperium seldom consisted of more than 2 members, and most often only a single emperor. Real political power lay in the hands of the 10 military governors who each control a major imperial province. Sometime between BC 4500 and BC 4035, gold mined in northwest Thonia is transported via large volumes of caravan traffic to Southport through the Coombe, the Valley of Ancients and the Blasted Woods. The caravan trail becomes known as the Gold Road. Sometime between BC 4500 and BC 4024, salt extracted from the Valley of the Ancients is traded to surrounding lands. Merchants travel through the High Hack to the plains of Hack, and through the Eastern Hack to the Northlands and Thonia. The merchant trails become known as the Salt Road. Within a decade of the founding of Blackmoor, the settlement of Vestfold was founded 50 miles to the southwest. The town was situated on the west bank of the Barleycorn River, as it entered the Bay of Riva. Sometime between BC 4499 and BC 4020, Baron Ozer of Glendower reigned for at least 3 years, and Baron Ning of Vestfold reigned for at least 12 years. By BC 4300, there were now 10 self-styled barons of the Unwanted, either ruling baronies or heading merchant houses. Namely, the Stuyvesants, the Peels, the Walcherans, the Degurns, the Cadet Degurns, the White Gladstones, the Red Gladstones, the Rothermans, the Campbells and the Fun Rains. In BC 4300, Thonian settlement reaches the east bank of the Mystara River. Thonia demands that the Duke of the Peaks return its slaves and escaped criminals, but the request is refused. Thonia starts building the War Road, from Vestfold to the Tower of Midges, through the Great Dismal Swamp to prepare for an invasion of the territory of the Unwanted. The Unwanted appeal to the Duke of the Peaks for assistance, but he refuses, realizing the Thonians are serious. The Duke sends a delegation to the Thonians in an attempt to make peace. Thonian forces then cross the Mystara River and burn the town of Hanford. The barons of the Unwanted offer token resistance and withdraw to the Brushy Fen. Against the advice of the Blackmoorians, the Thonian commander leads his 3,800-strong force into the Brushy Fen. 4 miles inside the fen, the Imperial army is cut to pieces by the Unwanteds. Only 400 survived, mostly colonials. 6 months after the victory at Brushy Fen, the Unwanted barons proclaim the Duchy of Ten, independent of the Duchy of the Peaks. The duchy rulership sits with a council of 10 barons. The Estates General is formed to represent the peasantry, tradesmen and the church. The Council of 10 chose one of their number to act as chief executive for a term of 4 years. The castle of Starmorgan is constructed as the seat of the Council of 10. Around BC 4155, the monks of the swamp found the Order of the Frog in Vestfold, possibly worshipping Demogorgon. They believe that humans are too weak to survive as a race. Instead, they must breed a tougher sentient race from frogs. The order attracts few numbers. When they start sacrificing humans, the locals drive them out of Vestfold and they flee to Frog Island in the Great Dismal Swamp. There, they build a temple in the shape of a frog. The monks find nixies in a small pond and throw coins in it for good luck. Soon after the temple is built, fur traders wheedled permission to set up trading posts along the southern shore of Frog Island. Sometime between BC 4154 and BC 4010, drifters, boards and criminals on the run came to settle among the fur traders of Frog Island, resulting in a shanty town, referred to as Frog Town. Around BC 4104, Menander Ithamus becomes clan master of the Redwood Elves at Ringlow Hall. Sometime between BC 4095 and BC 4025, the evil, supernatural and mysterious Egg of Coot magically causes a barren, stinking tongue of land to rise from the depths of the western Black Sea, northwest of Blackmoor. The land is referred to as the Realm of the Egg and its capital, the Egg's Nest. The Egg of Kut begins luring humans and others to its realm, binding their loyalty with mind control. The magic that caused the realm of the egg to surface also causes the land north of Mouse to sink, opening a new channel, the Shallows. This allowed the western and eastern Scandaharians to be able to combine their fleets and raid the coasts of the Black and North Seas. Around BC 4085, the village of Salt Town was founded in the eastern High Hack by Thonian artisans, craftsmen and traders with the permission of the Sirkam Peshwa, which translates as the hand of the people. In BC 4076, Gul Hadda is born amongst the Afridi in the Goblin Kush Mountains, far to the west of the plains of Hak. Sometime between BC 4060 and BC 4045, Uther Andahar was born in Blackmoor town. Around BC 4047, Umra Dir is born amongst the Afridi in the Goblin Kush. Sometime between BC 4047 and BC 4034, Bascom is born into the Ungulians, an old Thonian imperial family. Sometime between BC 4047 and BC 4015, Fredegar Cripps, the son of Blackmoor peasant farmers, decides to become an adventurer after seeing adventurers around the Gold Dragon Inn in Blackmoor town. Fredegar's first adventure is perilous, but rewarding as he finds a fortune. He decides adventuring is not for him. Instead, he spends his fortune on buying a cottage in town for his parents and the construction of the 50-foot-tall blackstoned comeback inn into a hill in the center of Blackmoor town. Fredegar hired the best wizards from Mohacs to use an array of magic on the inn, to enhance its defenses, hospitality, and the abilities of its owner. The location of the inn was also on a spot where time travel was enhanced, and a gate in the cellar was created. Wallingford Batts is hired not long after the inn opens as its barkeeper. At the time the comeback inn was constructed, Merrow were known to the Thonians of this time, noting they appeared in some of the inn's artwork. Sometime between BC 4045 and BC 4008, the great Svenny of Blackmoor slays the Grook king, Funk. Sometime between BC 4043 and BC 4028, Baron Andahar of Blackmoor sends his son, Uther, to Mohacs University. He hopes that this will bring more knowledge and less swordplay to the north. In BC 4042, Grieger Mendekamp is born in the Duchy of Ten. Sometime between BC 4040 and BC 4025, Uther Andahar returns to Blackmoor, bitter that his education in Mohacs lacked practical learning. Uther starts coming up with ideas for scientific inventions and pitches them to his father. Sometime between BC 4039 and BC 4024, Baron Andahar of Blackmoor is killed in battle against the Scandaharians. He was succeeded by his son Uther, who started funding scientific inventions from the baronial treasury. Over time, Baron Uther Andahar of Blackmoor demonstrated great military leadership in successful campaigns against the Egg of Kut and the Duchy of Ten. At the Battle of the Burn against the army of Ten, half the Thonian barons had withdrawn. The other half had been trapped and were about to be destroyed. Then Uther led 300 black plate-mailed horsemen from the rear of the enemy that smashed the remaining brown plate-mailed Tenian knights and won the day. In BC 4034, the Duchy of Ten's stone quarry at Gillian is abandoned due to nearby attacks on the Gold Road by an enormous and powerful hydra. The Gold Road is also closed. In BC 4032, Lady Rissa Aelfid is born in Lake Gloomy, stronghold of the barony of the Lakes, southwest of Blackmoor. Her mother died during her birth. Also in BC 4032, Kay de Gurn is born in Octogurn, in the barrier swamp of the northern Duchy of Ten. Around BC 4031, Eix is crowned Emperor of Thonia in Mohacs. In 4028 BC, Umra Dir becomes a priestess of Zugzul I. Also in 4028 BC, Mistress of God, Tosca Rosa, High Priestess of the Afridi, proclaims that it is their immortal, Zugzul I's, will that the Afridi conquer the lands to the east, in what is to be called the Great Migration. Zugzul gave his bride, Tosca, a dream of a fertile land by the sea as a wedding gift. In return, Tosca promised to build a temple to Zugzul out of gold. Suffering from a lack of resources in the cold and harsh Goblin Kush Mountains, the Afridi do not need to be convinced to migrate. The Afridi light infantry, archers and slingers descend from the Goblin Kush Mountains to the east, riding on their mountain ponies in vast numbers. They attack the Vale men, defeat their armies and overrun their settlements. In BC 4027, the Afridi hunt down, kill or capture the Vale men that survived last year's attacks. In BC 4026, the Afridi force captured Vale men to train them in heavy infantry tactics, which the Vale men said were very effective against the horsemen of the plains of Hak to the east. The secret Afridi male society, the Children of Zug, noticed the Vales are a male-dominated society. Their belief that the Sisters of Fire are deliberately downplaying Zugzul's Zug aspect of ice to oppress males begins to gain momentum as they see how other cultures work. Once High Priestess Tosca Ruza was satisfied with the training near the end of the year, she ordered the Afridi to enter the plains of Hak with spear contingents equipped as heavy infantry. 170,000 Afridi including non-combatants marched into the plains. In their wake, the Vales became the first province of the Afridi Empire. When news of this great migration of hillmen reached Emperor Eox of Thonia, he yawned and ordered slaves to bring him cooling ice to cut the pall of the summer heat. In BC 4025, the Afridi army attacks the Peshwa horsemen in the plains of Hak. The Afridi observe the Peshwa cavalry and decide to form their own to check the enemy. They swap their mountain ponies for riding horses. They train to ride fight on their new mounts, developing a light cavalry. The outbreak of was on the plains of Hak causes merchants to cease using the Salt Road. In response to the Afridi pushing the Peshwa back, Thonia builds Fort Mugger in the south of the eastern Hak. They garrison the fort with 600 men of the 17th Kurgan Lancers Regiment of Cavalry, commanded by Captain Peshton Teaser. The captain sends patrols throughout the Hak to keep tabs on the Peshwa. In BC 4024, the Afridi defeat the Peshwa and make the plains of Hak their second province. The Afridi set up a line of defended outposts across the plains of Hak, including Fort Jamud and Fort Jank to maintain supply and harry the remaining Peshwa. The Afridi camped and rested at the eastern end of these outposts in the fortified camps. The 12 Peshwa clans, led by the Sirkam Peshwa, comprising 14,000 people, retreat with their herds of grazers 300 miles to the High Hak, their summer grazing lands, and the eastern Hak, their winter grazing lands. During winter, 4,000 Peshwa, 6,000 horses, and 2,000 grazers survive in the eastern Hak. During summer, those numbers halve by migration to the High Hak. In the winter, the High Hak hosts 10,000 Peshwa, 11,000 horses, and 5,000 grazers. In summer, 12,000 Peshwa, 14,000 horses, and 6,000 grazers. The Sirk accompanied by 2,000 Peshwa, 4,000 horses, and 300 grazers head for their tall hill stronghold Sol Peshwan, seat of the people. The Peshwa garrison their wooden stockades on the northwestern border to defend against the Afridi, 400 in Dawlish, and 300 each in Lishtok, Naktok and Lintok. Despite these troops, the Afridi have been able to maintain a cavalry patrol of 300 on the High Hak year-round. With the loss of the plains of Hak, they won't have enough food to survive winters and the new Thonian Fort Mugger restricts passage between the High and Eastern Haks. Given this predicament, the Sirkam Peshwa seeks terms with the Thonian Empire. The Peshwa agree to cease their raids on Thonia, in return for free passage through Fort Mugger and food. Daring bands of hide hunters enter the Eastern Hak to hunt the grazers from under the Peshwa's noses and sell them in Thonia or Blackmoor. At any one time an average of 75 hide hunters operate on the High Hak. The Afridi Peshwa War creates business for weaponsmiths in Chumlish Penarth, with its population of 400, and for elven boyars in High Tenlish, with its population of almost 1,000 elves. In BC 4023, the Afridi invade the Duchy of Ten, a realm with a population of 75,000. The Tenians are overconfident with their heavy armor and war horses against the barbarian Afridi. In the first battle, the Afridi infantry withstand the charge of the Tenians' heavy cavalry, then their bowmen pick them off. The Afridi light cavalry does a good job harassing the Tenian infantry as the Afridi infantry gets on top. The Afridi win the battle. The Tenians regroup for the second battle, but the Afridi are victorious, proving their first victory was no fluke. The Tenians then retreat to their castles and walled settlements and do not offer battle. The Afridi equipped themselves with the plate armor and war horses of the fallen Tenians. Captured Tenian officers were forced to train Afridi heavy cavalry. Captured engineers were forced to teach the Afridi the art of siege warfare. Southport's economy begins to decline after the Afridi ban all trade with the Peshwa. Only hide and slave trading remain profitable. Fearing the Tenians will not withstand the Afridi, Captain Hieronymus Castagir, a smuggler, sells all his assets in Robinsport and deposits all his funds with moneylenders in Mouse. Between BC 4021 and BC 4017, Blackmoor's alarm at the Afridi invasion of Ten prompts it to send delegations to the Thonian capital, Mohacs, to plead for assistance against the Afridi, or to allow Blackmoor to assist the Duchy of Ten. Their requests are denied, and on one occasion, Thonia sends a delegation to Tosca bearing gifts. The Thonian delegates and their gifts are promptly sacrificed to Zugzul I by the Afridi. In BC 4020, Captain Hieronymus Castagir, the smuggler, buys Buto Bulazi from a Thonian slave factor and adds him to his crew. Blossom Castagir dies of plague in Robinsport whilst her husband Hieronymus is at sea, leaving their 3-year-old daughter, Jerry, without a guardian. Hieronymus was distraught upon his return and he used his savings plus a ruinous loan from a Robinsport moneylender to purchase a used coaster which he named Blossom. He then took his daughter Jerry, disguised as a boy, with him onto the vessel to be their new home. The great Sveni begins training Rissa Aelfid of the Lakes in the arts of war. In BC 4018, fearful of the might of the Afridi Empire, Duchess Sonia Sholako of the Peaks concludes a treaty of non-aggression with the Afridi high priestess Tosca. In BC 4017, the Afridi army marches on Port Dacoit. The Funrain family flee Port Dacoit with their possessions on 2 ships to Mouse. 300 inhabitants of Port Dacoit cross the Misorga in small boats, founding the villages of Fell and Duquesne. The Afridi smash through the walls of Port Dacoit and force the surrender of the last Tenian army. The Duchy of Ten becomes the Afridi Empire's 3rd province. Overall, 8,000 Tenians were killed in the 7-Year War. In BC 4016, the Afridi make the castle of Star Morgan their capital. Afridi troops loot the Duchy of Ten, killing 5,000, known as the Terror. The Afridi kill all members of 3 baronial families, the Stuyvesants of Port Dacoit, the Peels of Robinsport and the Walcherans of Robinsport. All of the de Guerns are butchered in the village square of Octogern except for Sir Kay de Guern. The Afridi kill all of the Cadet de Guern family of Rousagern except Baron Hubel de Guern. The Gladstones, Cadet Gladstones, Rothermans, and Campbells lose at least half of their family members and most of their property. 1,000 prominent Tenians flee by ship to Mouse. The Afridi outlaw worship of any immortal, other than Zugzul I in the Duchy of Ten. As 90% of Tenians belong to the Thonian High Church, many are executed. Churches are converted to barracks and stables. The Afridi also introduced the death penalty for usury, public drunkenness, Tenians bearing arms, dancing on non-religious holidays and secular art. Taxes are raised to crushing levels. In response, the Tenians revolt, but are viciously suppressed by the Afridi. The Tenian economy drastically declines. The Afridi send raiding parties across the Misorga River into the barony of the Lakes of the Thonian Empire to test the Thonians' resolve. They burn many villages, put the populace to the sword, then cross the Misorga River back to Ten. The Thonian northern barons rallied to the defense of the barony of the Lakes, and then led a counteraid across the Misorga River that cost the Afridi dearly. High Priestess Tosca was surprised by this counterattack and had to review her tactics. The Thonian governor of the Northlands was instructed to send a force to arrest the Baron of the Lakes for jeopardizing the peace between the Afridi and Thonia. The imperial force, reluctantly sent by the governor, is stopped at Bu by a force of Hin and men led by Uther Andahar, Baron of Blackmoor. The 2 forces withdrew without bloodshed. Emperor Eix of Thonia is outraged at the treason of the Barons of the Lakes and Blackmoor and orders their immediate capture and execution. Baron Uther Andahar of Blackmoor demanded a trial by peers according to imperial law. The emperor sent an army to the Northlands to arrest Uther. Uther went into hiding, secretly assisted by the old dwarfs. After months of hiding, moving, and skirmishing, Uther and the Northland's army, bolstered by a contingent of old dwarfs secretly led by Ubastar Kazakhoum, regent of the mines, were strong enough to make a stand against the imperial army at the Battle of Root River. The barons were victorious. The Great Rebellion of Northland's barons against the Thonian Empire began. With the Northlands in rebellion, and the Tenian rebellion crushed, the Afridi cross the Mystara River in full force and are met by the Northland barons led by Uther at the Battle of the Neck, between Lake Temperance and Bitter Lake. The Afridi eventually scattered the barons' troops, but lost 10,000, including many heavy infantry in doing so, mainly their left wing, which was trapped against Lake Temperance. The Afridi were effectively checked and retired to tend to regroup. Most Afridi non-combatants returned to the Vales after this battle, as they could not be supported indefinitely in the war zone. Total Afridi troop numbers dropped to 35,000, encouraging Tenians to plan another rebellion. The Northlands barons received news of another imperial army marching toward them. They held a council of barons at Vestfold and decided to sue for peace with the emperor. Their first messenger was imprisoned in Mohacs for being a rebel. They then sent the eldest son of the Baron of Archlees, but he was tried and beheaded for treason. A fortnight later, Uther Andahar declared himself king of Blackmoor and is crowned by Bishop Garamond Bolito of Blackmoor of the Thonian High Church. Uther began raising an army to fight the empire. Uther called for all men of conscience, who would fain see their loved ones in the chains of tyranny and injustice, stalk the land to join him. Baron Han Aelfid of the Lakes and Baron Bascom Ungulian of Glendower immediately rallied to him. Other nobles and adventurers followed and swore fealty to King Uther. The barons swearing fealty being Pitter Rall of Mouse and reluctantly Wulpa Gannet of Archlees. The king's companions were formed of some of the finest military commanders in the empire, namely, the Great Svenny, Peshwa Nar Shepro, Bascom Ungulian, Fletcher William, Marfelt the Barbarian, Mello the Halfling, Menander Ithamus, Philo Holbertin, Willem of the Heath and Wulpa Gannet. Vestfold is nominated as the capital of the Kingdom of Blackmoor. The Regency Council was also formed, to which Ubastar Kazakhoum was appointed by the dwarfs as an observer. The dwarfs were keen not to be seen to be allied to Blackmoor, to maintain relations with Thonia. Sildones, also known as the Wizard of the Wood, is appointed to the council. Blackmoor outlaws slavery, which is legal throughout the known world. Meanwhile, the Afridi regroup. 20,000 Afridi troops remain in Ten with 8,000 non-combatants. The remaining 130,000 or so Afridi have moved to the plains of Hack. Baron K. de Gurn begins organizing Tenians for a second rebellion in the glens of the Empty Lands, north and west of the Barrier Swamp. The remnants of the Rothermans, Campbells, Cadet de Gurns, and White and Red Gladstones have formed the Stellar Council, a Tenian government in exile in the Eves Forest. The Thonian High Church begins organizing Tenian exiles into the Brothers of the Greenwood. Elsewhere, the horsemen of Peshawar make sporadic attacks on the Afridi occupying the plains of Hack. The Afridi respond by sending patrols into the High Hack. Stout Robin Goodfellow, the guild master of the Robinsport Thieves Guild, mobilizes the guild to serve as the base of sedition against the Afridi conquerors. Robin works with the Thonian High Church, the de Gurn rebels and the Brothers of the Greenwood against the Afridi. In BC 4015, Tohar Markovich lures the slave farm master, known as the Warden, to leave the emperor's service to look after Tohar's estates in the Duchy of Borno. Emperor Eix is not impressed with Markovich for doing this. Sometime between BC 4015 and BC 4012, the Iron Duke, Tohar Markovich, leads the Thonians to victory over First Jarl Torsen One Thumb Skandaharians, at Torsen's capital, Borkshold. Between BC 4015 and BC 4011 the Kingdom of Blackmoor defends itself against the Thonian Empire, Skandaharian raiders, the Egg of Kut and the Afridi Empire. Baron Han Aelfid of the Lakes is killed in battle against the Thonian Imperial Cavalry in BC 4015. The Thonian Empire lost the first battle and then suffered heavy losses in the Crystal Peaks. The halfling, Mello Feathertoes, fights with distinction during the Great Rebellion. Baron Han Aelfid of the Lakes is succeeded by his daughter Rissa, with the Great Svenny acting as regent to quell some disquiet about her ability to rule. However, Rissa displayed her fine training over the next 6 months to become one of the most respected leaders of Blackmoor. The Egg of Coot staged 2 coastal raids, but they were beaten off. At the Battle of Glendower, Brother Richard, the Flying Monk, led a score of enemy pig-faced Grook away from the main battle by hurling insults at them and flying from tree to tree. He eventually led them to a tinder-dry forest and set fire to it. The ensuing blaze engulfed the Grook army, turning the tide of the battle. The Scandaharian raiders led by First Jarl Thorson One Thumb attacked Blackmoor and were defeated at the Battle of the Downs. The Afridi pushed through all the way to Blackmoor town. At the Battle of Blackmoor, Uther commanded 500 black plate mailed dismounted knights in a straggling shield wall formation in a field of poppies, flanked by woods. The shield wall, dubbed the Thin Black Line, proved effective against the rain of Afridi arrows. The Hin, Timothy Curlytop, fought with distinction in the battle. The Afridi were driven back to 10. They consider bypassing the Northlands by marching south of the Dragon Hills. But that was not Zugzul's way. Blackmoor's triumphs are hailed as the 5 victories. The opening up of new lands in the Kingdom of Blackmoor causes property values to fall. The Chief Constable of Blackmoor, Willem of the Heath, lost most of his wealth when a development scheme he invested in abruptly failed due to the sudden drop in property values. The elven adventurer, Veslo Meridan, is recruited by Fletcher William as an elite bailiff, after she played a conspicuous role in the pacification of the new lands. An evil wizard of the realm of the egg casts a geese on the halfling warrior Philo Holbertin, compelling him to betray and destroy the Regency Council. Philo ignored the geese and slowly lost strength and hit points. Sometime between BC 4015 and BC 4006, the Scandaharians found Bartertown on the northeastern coast of Buccaneer Bay to trade their loot for more desirable goods. Merchants from Mouse are frequent visitors to Bartertown, notwithstanding some of the goods for sale have been looted from their city's merchant ships. Thonia founds the gold mine of New Digging in the Chester Hills, west of South Chester in the Thonian Rand region of the Empire's northwest frontier. 400 slaves, 20 mining specialists, 15 overseers and 40 constables are involved in mining and refining 400 GP worth of raw gold per day. Once every 4 weeks, 20 imperial constables transport the output to New Brill. After 5,000 Tenians were killed during the Terror of BC 4015, a further 6,000 were killed under Afridi rule over the next 12 years. The Tenian pre-war population reduced from 75,000 to 50,000, with the remainder fleeing the duchy. In BC 4014, Clanmaster Menander Ithamis of the Red Wood is appointed Lord of the Elves of the North, as the various factions thought he would be easy to manipulate. Being Lord of the Elves of the North also gave him a seat on the Regency Council of Blackmoor. The Blossom is attacked by Frisian pirates. Buto Bulazi saves Jerry Castergear's life during the attack. Captain Hieronymus Castergear of the Blossom manumits Bulazi and makes him his bosun. Hedda Barra joins the comeback in as a cook. In BC 4012, Melanie Arquette is recruited by Scandros the Strangler from one of Mohawk's toughest criminal gangs. In BC 4011, Duke Tohar Markovich of Borno superbly commands the rear guard of the Imperial Thonian army's long and bloody retreat from the Northlands. Markovich's efforts earn him the nickname the Iron Duke from the Northlanders. Emperor Eix of Thonia is forced by the Senate to replace the governor of the northwestern province with the capable and ambitious Markovich. Markovich realizes he must gain control of the province of Blackmoor to aid his bid to become the Thonian emperor of all. Conversely, Emperor Eix deliberately underfunded Markovich's army of the north to prevent him from growing a power base to challenge his throne. Markovich sent emissaries to the Egg of Coot, the Scandaharians, and the Afridi in an attempt to organize a coordinated military attack on Blackmoor. He supplied weapons to the Peshwa to assist them against the Afridi and reopened the trading post of Colenso Station in the southeastern High Hack, which had been long closed by imperial edict. 10 traders and 50 cavalry from the 17th Kurgan Lancers are stationed there. Outraged at the Afridi's defeat by Blackmoor, Zugzul I sent instructions via a dream to High Priestess Toscaruza. Toscaruza ordered all she says to be written down by Bellerophon, a Tenian scribe. Zugzul spoke through his High Priestess, ordering a well of souls to be constructed in the Tor Kurum volcano of the barons of Karsh. Hundreds of victims must be sacrificed in the fiery well until enough energy is created to complete it, so that its power can assist the Afridi to victory over Blackmoor, then Thonia. The Well of Souls can only be destroyed by those not yet born. Tosca Ruza collapses from her trance and does not wake for 3 days. During this time, Bellerophon makes a copy of the transcript and gives it to a woodcutter who is associated with the resistance movement. When Tosca Ruza awoke, she ordered Bellerophon and any Tenians he may have spoken to be killed. All are killed, except the woodcutter who escapes and delivers the message to the brothers of the Greenwood resistance movement in the wilds of Ten. The Afridi search the barons of Karsh for a hill with a hollow crown. The Northlands is relatively peaceful between BC 4011 and BC 4006. Commerce improves and new settlements are founded between the Crystal Peaks and the Worm River. The new barony of Dragonia was awarded to Shepro, also known as Peshwan Nar Shepro, for his service during the Great Rebellion. The baron adopts a bright green dragon on a grey field as his symbol. Dragonia protects Blackmoor from the horsemen of Peshwar's fierce Bortai tribe who Shepro once lived amongst. The village of Dragonia is founded on the east bank of the Worm River, near its source. The Shire of Ram's Head was awarded to the Hin Philo Holbertin for his leadership during the Great Rebellion. Ram's Head was located approximately 132 miles south-southeast of Blackmoor, near the mouth of the Worm River. The Baron of Williamsfort is exiled for excesses. Williamsfort now comes under the jurisdiction of the Crown. The new barony of Newgate was awarded to the Great Sveni. It was located at the confluence of the Root River and the Draco Channel, approximately 100 miles southeast of Blackmoor. Brother Richard the Flying Monk of the High Church of Thonia rejected all rewards and a seat on the Regency Council. Instead he asked for a fief that he donates to the High Church. He founded Fairfield Abbey about 20 miles northwest of Dragonia, between the Wormwood and the Worm River. 50 monks and lay brothers move to the abbey and start making beet jelly. Richard's brother, Bocero the Drunkard, built a tower south of Baselake, on the opposite bank of the confluence of the Worm and Running Rivers. The University of Blackmoor is founded with men, elves, old dwarfs, and Hin invited to attend. Fletcher William is appointed the university's keeper of the peace with 40 full-time bailiffs and 40 student auxiliaries, which was a front for Blackmoor's spy network. Bishop Garamond Bolito of Blackmoor strongly supports the university and encourages the clergy to attend. Threatened by knowledge being made available to all, a group of wizards led by Tamys Azkanakin, the Green Man, formed the Wizards' Cabal to oppose Uther and his university, and to work toward returning the North to Thonia. The wizards staged a revolt in Vestfold that was crushed by Blackmoor. Jalapiri was one of the wizards who sided with the Regency Council. Tamys barely escaped with his life after being caught in a fireball. He fled to the tower ruin of Old North Watch. Tamys then started rebuilding the Wizards' Cabal with funding provided via Scandros the Strangler, an agent of Duke Tohar Markovich of Borno. The old dwarfs of the Crystal Peaks are opposed to the technological studies of the university. Knowledge best left to dwarfs, they believe. Between BC 4011 and BC 4004, the Afridi located Tor Kurum in the Barons of Karsh. They then built approximately 120 miles of road to the hill from their capital Starmorgan with Tenian slave labor. Once completed, they excavated the hill and constructed a temple forge and the Well of Souls. Sher Yaqub was appointed senior military command of Tor Kurum. Sister of Fire, Umra Dir, was in charge of creating the Well of Souls and was assisted by the Afridi's best wizard, Gul Hadda, and 4 Afrit. Concerned at the growing resistance movements of the Tenians in the Eves and the Empty Lands, the Afridi built a series of forts and roads between the Root and Thunder rivers. The forts were Jank, Jamud, Waza, Paywar, Kost and Sherpa. 4,000 troops were diverted from the Misorga River to these forts. The withdrawal of manpower from the Misorga River allowed raids across the river from the barony of the lakes to increase. The Circum Peshwa and Duke Tohar Markovich of Borno came to terms. The Peshwa agreed not to expand any further east. In return, Thonia agreed to supply the Peshwa with goods and weapons. The Duke gave the Cirque a girdle of giant strength as a token of goodwill. In BC 4010, the Galactic Federation starship Beagle from another dimension crash-landed on Mystara in the Valley of the Ancients, about 240 miles south of Blackmoor. Most of the light green-skinned human crew survived. The ship sent out a distress signal, but a rescue ship did not come in the expected time. The crew did not realize they had crossed into another dimension, so their distress signal was unable to reach their home dimension. The awed local sandfolk referred to the aliens as gods and to their spaceship as the City of the Gods. The sandfolk staged a gathering of tribes at the Shrine of Axmouth in the northeast of the valley, and decided the Sky City was no danger to them. The city could be traded with, or raided, whilst accepting a peace treaty. Captain Bork Riesling of the FSS Beagle ordered his crew to go into suspended animation to await rescue and prohibited any interaction with the locals as prescribed by Federation regulations. A group of dissident crew members didn't believe they would ever be rescued and wanted to enslave and industrialize the primitive world around them. After a heated debate, the dissidents mutinied and tried to take over the ship. Riesling and his loyal crew defeated the mutiny. The surviving mutineers, Stephen Rocklin the Rock, a security officer, and his 4 companions, Brand Kirk, a hydroponics technician, Digar Mendel, a quartermaster's mate, Lynn Raup, an assistant security officer, and Willis Strom, an assistant engineer, flee in a lifeboat. Riesling sent the cyborg Wewak to hunt them down and ordered extra defenses set up to protect the ship from the mutineers and the planet's natives. The crew were then placed into suspended animation. Rocklin and his 4 companions Kirk, Mendel, Raup and Strom are shot down near the Temple of the Frog in their escape lifeboat by a Hellbore missile fired from the FSS Beagle. Rocklin used technology or the Order of the Frog. The High Priest made the 5 crew members saints. Not long afterwards, Rocklin convinced the Order to sacrifice the High Priest to the Frog and make him High Priest. He added technology to the Temple of the Frog. He reorganized the Order's hierarchy, appointed Saint Brand as Rector, Saint Digar as Chancellor, Saint Lynn as Guardian, Saint Willis as Magus and Saint Sefton as Chief Keeper. Saint Sefton was in charge of the 32 keepers of the frogs. Below the saints and keepers ranked the 16 inner circle monks, the 20 outer circle monks, the 30 acolytes and then the 200 lay brothers. Saint Stephen used a behavior-modifying device to control the Order's members. Saint Stephen ordered the creation of frog folk by performing genetic surgery on humanoids. The keepers of the frogs resented Stephen for usurping their frog species creation efforts. The Order then began an active recruitment drive. Saint Stephen led the Order of the Frog on a night attack to purge Frog Town of its bandits, who had been attracting too much attention to the Order. The bandit leaders were executed. An inner circle monk was appointed to govern Frog Town with veto power over any activity. The inhabitants were all collared to ensure they could be tracked, so as not to leave Frog Town without permission. The collars exploded if they were tampered with. Frog Towners were incensed by these regulations, with about 50% willing to revolt, 45% cautious and 5% loyal to the Order. In BC 4009, Blackmoor learned of the City of the Gods in the Valley of the Ancients. An expedition led by Fletcher William the Fetch travelled to the city to seek an alliance. Setting off south from Robert the Bald's tower, they entered the Valley of the Ancients through the Axmouth Gate. They tried to contact the gods but got no answer. Less than a third of the party made it back to Blackmoor. The rest were killed by thirst, desert monsters, and metal warriors of the City of the Gods. In BC 4008, Priest Gregor Mendicamp of the Thonian High Church fled from his Afridi hunters, out of the Duchy of Ten to Blackmoor town where he joins Bishop Garamond Bolito. Feathered broad-brimmed hats and slash-sleeved velvet tunics become fashionable in Blackmoor. In BC 4007, agents of the Egg of Coot kidnapped the bride of Baron Bascom Ungulian of Glendower on his wedding night. The Baron led a band of 6 retainers to the realm of the Egg to recover his bride, but is not heard from again. Markovich's spies find one of the wizards who designed the comeback inn where King Uther was known to frequent in disguise. After many discussions and gold changing hands, the wizard revealed the secrets of the comeback inn to Markovich's wizard. Markovich's wizard then treacherously killed the informer. Scandros the Strangler ordered Melanie Arquette to infiltrate the Comeback Inn. Melanie arranged the murder a young wench working at the inn, then sought employment as a barmaid. Needing a replacement, Fredegar Cripps gratefully employed her. Her role was to assist Duke Markovich's agents get through the gate. Markovich's agents traveled through time via the gate to the future, where they cleaned up the inn to serve as a prison out of time for Uther. The agents were led by the warden and included his pet displacer beasts Hissa and Gripper, his bodyguard Nika Bray, his cook Hamish Donga, and 10 guards. In BC 4006 on Midsummer's Night, King Uther went disguised as a tinker to the Comeback Inn to hear the talented Thonian songstress Lola Daffin, who was secretly an agent of Markovich. The disguise did not fool Markovich's agents though. Suddenly the king disappeared, teleported by Markovich's agent, Dubanino Scatchman, to the cellar and then transported through the magic portal. The king's companions searched the inn but found no trace of him. Within hours the Regency Council was in session and decreed that the council had the power of the king in his absence. Svenny became nominal head of the council. The Comeback Inn was closed until further notice. All persons at the inn other than the king's companions were to remain in Blackmoor town. Those who lived more than 10 miles from the town were ordered to stay at the inn under guard. 2 Blackmoor agents, Alwyn Morland and Veslo Meridan, were posted as guards. A call went out to all powerful wizards friendly to Blackmoor for assistance. The investigation turned up no clues. All attention now turned to the odd gate in the inn's deepest cellar. The wizard Robert the Bald theorized that some enemy of the king teleported him to the cellar, where he was dragged through the portal to another space and time. The fact that he was kidnapped and his kidnappers went through the portal with him led Robert to believe that those who enter the gate can return. The Regency Council set up a magical commission to ponder Robert's theory and doubled the inn's guard. After a year of study, the commission found the gate was only open on the night of the full moon and nothing that went through ever came back. Whilst the search for Uther continued, Duke Markovich's army prepared to invade. The Afridi were on the move. The Egg of Coot's general, Prince Morcock the Slayer, was training a new army of human slaves and mercenaries to invade Blackmoor. The Scandaharians were building a new fleet of longships to loot Vestfold, Blackmoor, and if possible Mouse. Timothy Curlytop was elected Shiremaster of Boo, clan chief and regent of the Hin of the Northern Marches during the Hin festival. In BC 4005, on a cold winter's day, a group of strangers suddenly emerged from the Comeback Inn's gate from the year AC 1000, Joriel Takis, Thurn Moore of Thyatis, Axel Kars from Denargoth, Perda Blue, Newton Depot, Alphidia Alcott, Cochra the Touch from Ilaruum City, Sean Boldfinger, Gillam Candom of the Wendarian Ranges, Ismelian Satardis the Archer of southeastern Alfheim, Jelen Melendil originally from Alfheim, now residing in Corunglan, and Bob Silverheels from the Five Shires. They eventually rescued King Uther Andahar the Justifier of Blackmoor from agents of Duke Tohar Markovich of Borno, the Iron Duke, from the Comeback Inn of the future. Agents of Duke Tohar Markovich of Borno destroyed Bramford Abbey, capturing all the monks. Baron Bram Tagus of Bramvold blames the attack on the Regency Council of Blackmoor. Bishop Garamond Bolito of Blackmoor conducted an even-handed investigation that cleared the Regency Council of any involvement. In violation of a treaty, Ubastar Kazakum, regent of the mines, led his fellow old dwarfs on a beastman of the Black Hand hunting expedition in the Crystal Peaks, but he was captured and enslaved by the beastmen. The Sixth Dwarven Beastman War erupted. The old dwarfs attacked the Black Hand's stronghold, but were defeated. They instead razed the Black Hand's lands. The beastmen retaliated and even made it to the gates of the northern delving. Lortz Carnundrum was appointed regent of the mines. Sheriff Philo Holbertin of Ramshead woke from a hideous dream to discover a medallion had been placed around his neck. He recognized the medallion to be an Eye of the Egg, a device enabling the Egg of Coot to see through the wearer's eyes. Despite trying to throw it away, it always returned. Philo decided to keep it hidden. The Afridi stationed 20,000 troops in the Duchy of Ten, mostly on the eastern border. 1,800 were posted in Robinsport and 1,200 in Port Dacoit. Silver Bell, Hanford, and Southport each had garrisons of 1,100. 3,000 were posted in Starmorgan. Ruzagern and Octogern both housed 1,000 troops. 50 cavalry were stationed in Whitehorse to ensure no trading with the Peshawar occurred. Mistress of God, Tosca Ruza, was negotiating a deal with Duchess Sonia Sholako of the Peaks for the latter to provide 1,000 heavy pikes to assist the invasion of Blackmoor. An offer of an advance payment of gold had Duchess Sonia interested, as she needed to continually fund the public spectacles her people were accustomed to. There were 16,000 old dwarfs in the kingdom of Blackmoor. 10,000 in the Crystal Peaks, with most of the rest in the Stormkiller Mountains. There were 9,000 elves in Blackmoor. 5,000 in the Red Wood, with 3,000 of those in Ringlow Hall. A small colony was struggling to tame the wetwood south of Blackmoor. The Kingdom of Blackmoor had a population of 130,000. 2,300 halflings live in Boo and 1,000 at Ram's Head. Temple of the Frog cultist attacks on the settlements of the southern lands of the barony of the lakes increased. The Frog cultists raided the village of Burret on the edge of the Great Dismal Swamp and carried away 25 villagers. Baroness Rissa Aelfid of the Lakes led a small band to try to rescue the villagers. Rissa and her party were ambushed by Frog cultists led by Commander Skilk near the Root River. Rissa and her guard were taken prisoner, except for 2 who escaped. One guard made it back to South Pym bringing news of the Baroness's capture. King Uther Andahar, the Justifier of Blackmoor, reluctantly deferred to the Regency Council's wish and nominates the great Sveni to try to find Rissa instead of going himself. Sveni's party found the site of the skirmish, but no tracks of the attackers. Sveni returned with only one clue, a brooch of a frog with a human in its mouth. Uther appointed Jalapiri as temporary ruler of the Barony of the Lakes. After weeks of investigation, agents of Fletcher William the Fetch found a cleric in the city of Mouse who recognized the brooch as belonging to the Order of the Frog of Frog Island in the Great Dismal Swamp. After more investigation, Fetch discovered that Miklos Haruska, Old Slyboots, guildmaster of the Vestfold Thieves Guild, has been to the Temple of the Frog. Haruska was summoned to Castle Blackmoor and told King Uther that he was supplying the monks of the swamp with recruits from Vestfold's criminal underworld. Fetch came up with a plan to have agents pose as recruits to find the Temple of the Frog and rescue Rissa. As his regular agents may have been recognized, Fetch recruited adventurers from the future. The recruits are Joriel Takis, Thurn Moore, Axel Kars, Perda Blue, Newton Depoe, Alphidia Alcott, Cochra the Touch, Sean Boldfinger, Gilliam Candom, Ismelian Satardis, Jelen Melendil and Bob Silverheels from AC 1000. The adventurers rescued Rissa and her 5 guardsmen, as well as other captives, and fled Frog Island. Weewak, the cyborg sent by the FSS Beagle to hunt Stephen and his crew, self-destructed, collapsing the Temple of the Frog. Fighting broke out between the monks and the Frog Towners. High Priest of the Order of the Frog, Saint Stephen Rocklin, the Rock, escaped by teleporting to a boat. The adventurers returned with Rissa to Blackmoor. The Barony of the Lakes army marched on the Temple of the Frog, but found it ruined and abandoned. After the army of the Barony of the Lakes departed, the Order of the Frog began rebuilding their temple. Saint Stephen began rebuilding the Order of the Frog in order to capture the FSS Beagle for more technology. To that end, he created the Soldiers of the Frog. Saint Stephen led the Soldiers of the Frog on a successful raid into the FSS Beagle, stealing battle armor and heavy blasters. He then posted Soldiers of the Frog around the perimeter of the FSS Beagle to protect his prize from others. In response, Captain Riesling increased security and ordered D-bots to patrol the surrounding land. He surgically altered the cyborgs, Fritz and Karl, to look like him and accompany him at all times. He made a treaty with Chief Darnell of the Ngumalaka Sand Folk tribe of the Valley of the Ancients, in violation of Federation regulations. To seal the agreement, Riesling gifted Darnell a suit of battle armor and a communicator. He ordered all crew to be conditioned to combat St. Stephen's conditioned followers. The Sand Folk attacked the Soldiers of the Frog, sustaining serious casualties due to the Froggies' technological weapons. In response, the Ngumalaka tribe led by Chief Darnell raided the City of the Gods for weapons, in defiance of the treaty, and lost many to the city's defenses. Riesling became increasingly paranoid of mutiny and accused junior crewman, Rickard Betts, of stealing some of his fruit and smuggling it to mutineers. Betts panicked and escaped to the east in a stolen scout. The scout caught fire and Betts crash-landed at Benbow's Hectare, south of Dragonia. When confronted by Garni Benbow, Betts aimed his hand blaster at him, but was killed by a bolt from Benbow's crossbow. The flying patrols of D-bots in the region caught the attention of the 200 blue and red dragons inhabiting the series of hills, referred to as the Dragon Hills, the South Dragons and the Spine of the Dragon. Some moved into the eastern hack and started hunting grazers. Hill giants, troll-like beast men, basilisks and ghouls also populated those hills. Vindoke, in the Kerman Peaks, south of the Valley of Ancients, is home to 36 fire giants, 12 hydri and 200 hellhounds. 2,000 geonids of the Kerman Mountains served the fire giants out of fear. They manned stone monolith trading posts at Com and Farah. The Wyvern Hills to the north of the High Hack contained lairs of the creature they were named for. The Badlands, Blue Hills and Ash Hills contained hill giants, red dragons, ghouls, hydri and camarillas. King Uther Andahar of Blackmoor learned that a wizard crashed in a flying egg at Benbow's Hectare, south of Dragonia. He was disturbed by reports that froggies were seen investigating the egg. Bocero the drunkard was dispatched to study the egg. Later, Uther dispatched adventurers from the future, Alphidia Alcott, Axel Cars, Bob Silverheels, Gellan Melendil, Gillam Candom, Ismelian Satades, Joriel Takis, Cochra the Touch, Newton Depoe, Purda Blue, Sean Boldfinger and Thurn Moore, as well as Brother Richard, the Flying Monk, Baron Peshwan Nar Shepro of Dragonia to investigate the egg, the resurgent froggies and the city of the gods. The king hoped Bocero would gain enough loot from the mission to pay the 8,000 GP he owed creditors. Brother Richard was asked to go on this mission by Bishop Garamond of Blackmoor, and pledged to donate his share to the church. Guildmaster Scotty de Belfry of the Mouse Thieves Guild volunteered to go on the mission in the hope of gaining some technological devices for his guild. Whilst investigating the egg, Bocero activated a signaling device that triggered the FSS Beagle's computer to send 6 D-bots to the source. The D-bots grabbed Bocero, destroyed the egg and returned to the FSS Beagle. The adventurers penetrated the city's defenses, freed Bocero and returned to Blackmoor with some strange artifacts. The mages and sages of Blackmoor began studying the strange artifacts. Ropers and wolves were found in the Wood of the Revenant, the Blasted Woods, the Ringwood, the Anglewood, Greenhaven, Buster's Woods, Boater's Wood, the Mumblewood, the Linton Wood, the Bracken and the Tiverton Greening, around the lands of the Peshwa. Pixies also inhabited those woodlands, except for the Blasted Woods. Green dragons inhabited the Blasted Woods. Spectres haunted the Ringwood. A Gakarak brooded in the Mumblewood. In BC 4004, the Afridi moved 2,000 troops from the banks of the Misorga River to the plains of Hak, as they were fearful of a full-scale invasion by the horsemen of Peshwa. They reopened the stone quarry at Gillian to assist construction of new roads from Ruzagurn to the Vales and from Fort Jank to Fort Jamud. Camp Maksud guarded the road being built from Fort Jamud to the Vales. Camp Oryxai guarded the road being built from Fort Jank to Fort Jamud. The Afridi planning a large fort for Whitehorse as well. 2,000 Tenians flocked to the empty lands, being the plains north and west of the Barrier Swamp, where Baron K. de Gurn of Octogurn was leading a rebellion from his camp in the glens. He had 1,500 warriors spread throughout the Trackers, the wilds of Nin and the glens. He was accompanied by his chaplain, Yosef Angmar, and his physician, Paulie Kell. His rebel army harassed supplies to the Afridi's Fort Paywar, killing over 300 Afridi in 5 months. 3,000 Tenians had withdrawn to the Eves, in the Duchy's west, to form a rebellion under the leadership of the Stellar Council. At this stage, there were 20,000 Afridi troops and 8,000 Afridi civilians in the Duchy of Ten. The Afridi increased their defences at Octogurn, where they had 24 large supply warehouses to support their planned campaign against the empty lands. The Duchy's economy had been ruined by the oppression of the Afridi. The Afridi started looking for ways to improve commerce. The Tenian branch of the Thonian High Church organised various Tenian bandits into the Brothers of the Greenwood Resistance Movement. They had 8,000 members and 6,000 sympathisers. 800 of them were in the northwestern forests of the empty lands. Afridi spies were aware that Blackmoor was supplying weapons to the brothers and had trained them at Duquesne. Blackmoor had 24 elite guardsmen at Duquesne acting as trainers. Blackmoor was in the process of constructing a keep at Fells. The Afridi had impressed 200 laborers to expand Rouzagurn Keep. The Afridi added 8 heavy catapults to Fort Sherpa, to control the shipping lane of the Thunder River. This was designed to deter Blackmoor from supplying the Tenian rebels by sea. It had also put pressure on Duchess Sonia Sholako of the Peaks to consider supporting the Afridi, as the Thunder River was her only shipping channel. The barons of Karsh were inhabited by fire giants and their hellhounds, Karsh lizards, flame salamanders, and orc-like beast men. Efreet had been attracted there by the Well of Souls. The barrier swamp was inhabited by gator men, crocodiles, both normal and giant leeches, giant toads and giant rats. The eaves were inhabited by the Gakarak Benoit, ropers and wyverns. The empty lands were inhabited by griffins, lions and pit vipers. The Gargoyle Hills were inhabited by their namesakes, hill giants and goats. The glens were inhabited by the Dryad Melian and a Gakarak called Ivor who didn't mind Sir Kay de Gurn because he respected the forest. The Great Dismal Swamp and the Brushy Fen were inhabited by lizard men, crocodiles, giant leeches and rock pythons. The Hills of Ten were inhabited by hill giants, wolves, wild goats, gorgons and wyverns. A group of merrow and dolphins were hunting ships on the Black Sea after their kin were killed by occupants of a ship. The ship was sailed by Scandaharians. The Black Sea was inhabited by dragon turtles, merrow, dolphins, sea hydras, harpies on rocky islands and water termites. Pteranodons were bred as pets by the Egg of Coot. Grazers and horses inhabited the plains of Hack. The wilds of Ten were inhabited by ropers, brigands, and wolves. Zugzul's prophecy recorded by Bellerophon the scribe in BC 4011 has for the past 7 years been passed through the Brothers of the Greenwood. From them the message finally reached priest Grigor Mendicamp of the Thonian High Church, a refugee from Ten, living in Blackmoor town. Mendicamp showed the message to Bishop Garamond Bolito of Blackmoor who called in Blackmoor's chief agent Fletcher William the Fetch. Fetch immediately realized he had in his service agents who were not yet born, they were from the future and could destroy the Well of Souls before it was completed. Son brother, Crider the Solux, was drawn to Tor Curum by the large number of Ifrit gathering there, the ancestral enemy of the Solux. The Scandaharian longship, the Ghost Maker, completed a successful raid and headed to Bartertown to sell the loot. Captain Sigurd Gustafsson then set sail for home, across the Black Sea and then up the Firefrost Channel. The Blackmoor agents plus Gregor Mendicamp boarded the ship, Blossom, and were smuggled into Robinsport. Assisted by stout Robin Goodfellow, the guild master of the Robinsport Thieves Guild, the adventurers disguised themselves as Thonian scribes and made their way to Tor Curum. At Tor Curum, the adventurers fought their way through the Afridi and reached the Forge Room. After defeating the Afridi commanders, they pushed the nearly completed Well of Souls into a lava pit, destroying it. The agents escaped Ten, dodging Afridi patrols and soul eaters sent by Zugzul. This concludes our look at the second half of the 5th millennium BC, a period dominated by the rise of a frontier barony to a kingdom on the cusp of greatness.